to The Truth Will Not Be Silenced, the show that allows people to be seen, to be heard, and to be human. I'm your host, Melissa Woodfork White. In today's episode, we will talk about human resource management, employer versus employee, with Jennifer Lawson. Sharing our stories allows us to encourage, inspire, motivate, uplift, and help people. There will be a special surprise at the end of the show. Be sure to listen all the way through for the details. Our special guest today is Jennifer Lawson. She is a proud graduate of Emporia State University in Emporia, Kansas. Jennifer is a strategic thinking human resources and project management professional with over 15 years experience in the technical, transportation, retail, and government industries managing client needs. With a Bachelor of Science in Business and a Human Resources Management and Project Management certification, she is known for event management, restructuring, and creating and implementing policy and procedures to improve morale, enhance employee engagement, and boost organizational goals. Outside of HR, she is a plant and dog mommy. She enjoys karaoke, sports, and game nights. Jennifer is going to share with us about human resource management, employer versus employee. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Melissa. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Glad to have you. So we're going to jump right into our first question. What is human resource management and its purpose? I want you to break this down for us.
Okay, so it is a lot. Human resources management. It is a business within itself. So basically, human resources management is it's a strategic system, and at the bare bones minimum, basically, it is hiring people, training people, paying people, creating policies and procedures to benefit the people, and then having policies and procedures to retain the people. Bare bones minimum, that's what it is. So hiring, training, paying you, keeping you there, and making sure I give you the stuff to make you happy while you're here. That's human resources management. To break it down even further, HR is really 5 categories. You have recruitment and staffing, compensation and benefits, compliance and legal, employee relations, and I always forget the last one, training and development. So that's what HR is. So HR is a lot. People think it's just, hiring and firing, but it's a lot that goes in between that. So it's a lot of things. I don't know if you want me to break down each individual step of. Okay, break them all down.
You don't have to break, you can just touch on a little bit from each one.
From each
You
one.
don't have
Okay.
to go in depth just to give us that foundation.
Gotcha. So recruitment and staffing, everyone knows what that one is. So, the company needs to hire someone. They work with the recruitment team to figure out what they need. They set up a plan, hire the person. Training and development, simple. We're going to train you to do the job and develop you if you don't know how to do the job. Compliance and legal is just making sure we're following all of the legal parts of human resources, hiring, training, all of those HR laws like overtime pay and your benefits, making sure the company is giving the adequate benefits they're supposed to have. They're following any disability laws, things of that nature. Employee relations, most people think it's just dealing with like sexual harassment or discrimination, but employee relations also has to do with maybe you don't understand your job well, you're getting some negative feedback, you're on a performance plan. Employee relations team kind of steps in and also assists with that. And then which one do I have left? Compensation and benefits, the most important one. We have to pay you. So there's a compensation and benefits team because there's a lot of metrics that go into figuring out compensation and benefits. A lot of people complain about, they're not getting enough pay. Well, there's formulas that they use. So there's a specific training for each one. So that's the part also about HR that people don't kind of understand. They think one person does everything. which kind of an HR generalist does all of these things. But most of the time, it's one person that does each individual step
Mhm.
because it's extensive for each one. Yeah, that
So
was a lot.
that was great. So Jennifer, tell us, who is HR for? Is HR for the employer or the employee, or is it for both the employer and the employee? Break it down for us.
So it is for both. Yes, before I got into HR, I was one of those people that was like, oh, HR don't care about the people, they're just for the business. And in a sense, they are. They are hired for the company to assist the company in hiring you and retaining you as well. But there are policies and procedures in place to keep you. So the company does want to keep you, your compensation and benefits compliance. Compliance isn't just for the company, it's also compliance to keep you. If you have any disabilities, if you are a person, maybe you're caring for a family, age discrimination, all of those things benefit the employee, not just the employer. But I like to tell people if it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. So your task as an employee is to make sure everything you're doing at your job, anything anybody says, please write it down. If you have a conversation with your manager about maybe they want you to pick up some extra work and do something extra, send an email just to follow up and say, hey, I know we had this conversation the other day. I just want to make sure that I understand you want me to do XYZ. So it doesn't look like you're trying to pin them in a way, but it's just to protect yourself. Because if you don't, yes, HR then is more beneficial for the employer and not the employee. But you have to kind of work the system so HR benefits you as well. So it's both.
Now, some people would disagree with
I,
you,
I
and,
know,
and
I
I'm
know.
and we got to get into this,
You
okay?
do it. That's
So,
why I'm here.
so depending on the industry,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the business or the organization, it comes off at times
Yep.
that HR is all about the business or the organization and not about the employee. There's a debate that's going on now about how HR is just for the employer. And so the reason for that debate is, and don't quote me on this, but I know that you're the expert and you'll get us straight. The debate is that if an employee has a concern or situation, HR is more likely to cover it up than to help you through it. And so you touched on it already
Mm-hmm.
because this one is a very big one, especially here in the United States, is that discrimination piece.
Yes.
And whether or not that company or that business or that organization or that school is going to actually adhere to the federal and state laws where they have to positively resolve, most likely, this is where this debate comes in, they just cover it up and try to get rid of the employee. As a professional, certified, degreed in your career, where are you on this side of the debate?
So I'm on both sides.
Okay.
I would say
Give us the first one and then
I've
give us
been
the
on both
second.
sides.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, when something happens in an organization, HR's job is to find out the truth. That is bare bones minimum what we're supposed to do. However, there are a lot of organizations that use the rules of HR against the employee. I'm not going to lie about that. We're not going to cover it up. That is very much true. If you go up to your HR team and say your manager sexually harassed you, the HR team is, so let me back up. So HR is more like a partnership now. David Elric, there's a man like 50, 60 years ago, he changed HR. It went from just a functional part of the organization to a partnership. So HR has a lot of weight, more weight now than it did back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So if an HR partner comes in and you're talking to them, they're more likely want to take the company side because it is a partnership. They are an executive on this team. They want to make sure to the shareholders that you look good. And oh, this manager did this. It doesn't look good. So, yes, on that end, it does look like HR is for the company. However, as an employee who has been on that side, that's why I say it is important for you to write everything down, to get everything in writing, because at the end of the day, technically, yes, HR is more on the business side. However, there are policies and procedures in place to make it beneficial to you. You just have to make sure that you have everything you need to back up what you're saying. And in those instances where it's shades of gray, as I like to say, cry. Break down and cry. Get emotional. As Black people, we often get a little strong. Be vulnerable, be sensitive, and state your case. So
I will tell you this.
I'd say it's more 60-40
Okay.
for the company than the employee. Yes. Unfortunately, yes. I sadly have to admit that because of the
Well,
industry that I'm in.
I am in agreement with everything you
Yeah.
said because I come from HR and management and finance. And so, with that being said, I've experienced both sides too.
Mhm.
As HR, when I worked in HR and management, I followed the guidelines, I followed policies and procedures. I wanted to get to the truth of everything. But as an employee outside of that environment, I have experience where I have been sexually harassed. Like someone kissed me on my cheek at work, and I filed a complaint about it, and then it was just brushed off. And so that's what I'm talking about. I've also had another experience from them. Instead of them getting to the truth of the matter, getting to the heart of the matter to resolve it, I had to work with somebody who invaded my personal space without my permission.
Mhm.
And someone who needed to be corrected on being in a professional work environment.
Mhm.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
And it creates a hostile work environment. It creates a toxic work environment when it goes unchecked.
Mhm. And
I've
that
also
unfortunately happens a
experienced,
lot. Yeah.
yes, I've also experienced, but the line for harassment is not blurred. It is a black and white line.
It is a blessing.
It's unwanted. It's not a gray area.
Mhm.
I documented. This is what happened to me. Nothing was done. It was brushed over as if that person didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
And that was not their intent. I don't care what their intent was. Harassment is black and white.
No.
It doesn't matter what their intent is. What matters is how I received it. And
Mhm.
so that's where the lines get blurred and it's like, okay, so because I followed policies and procedure, now I'm the problem employee who was harassed while doing the job. And so that's what a lot of people face on the job. I'm just sharing my experience. I'll share another one from the employee side.
Mhm.
I was told by one of my managers who don't look like me to keep my mouth shut when I go into meetings because people that don't look like me are intimidated by
Yeah.
me.
I've had a similar
If
conversation.
that is not there is no gray area for discrimination. And some people that don't look like us will disagree. But when you're on the receiving end, there is no gray area.
And I
It's
think that's
gray
also
area.
you. I'm sorry to cut you off,
No,
but I
go
think
ahead.
that's
Go ahead.
also something as well is that there needs to be more people like us that are decision makers that can be the person to stand up for us when things like that happen. And that is one of the reasons that I did get into HR, specifically in recruiting, is where I started because there was no one to kind of tell us things that we didn't know. to you need to see if you can research salary, because sometimes you will not get chosen for the next round if you don't say the accurate salary that you think you should be having, or how your resume is written, or just the little things and how to conduct yourself in an interview. That's why I purposely wanted to get into HR, because we need more people to fight for us. And I think that also would help more in these situations where people are being harassed or being discriminated against, to have someone to say, hey, wait, no, this isn't right. And that's really what it boils down to. It's like anything in this country, it's the powers that be
Mm.
don't want us to succeed. And so it's us trying to find ways around that so we do get our justice.
So
And
this
mhm,
So this, having experienced this from the employee end, this is where the employer does get to the truth and finds out that what happened to me, it did happen. But because they don't want to be liable for it, or they don't want to have to correct it, the moment that they start correcting it, it makes them responsible. So this is where I say HR is for the business.
mhm,
Because if they admit any liability, any whatever, it opens them up to being responsible for their employee, when in actuality, you are responsible for all employees.
exactly.
You are responsible for retaining top talent.
Mhm,
You are responsible for positively resolving any type of conflicts, any type of what that get escalated that may amount to a toxic work environment, that may amount to working in a hostile work environment. So what I've come to find out in my own experience, because I come from HR, I got my degree and so forth. I've had over 12 years experience prior to education. And so with that being said, I've come to find out as an employee in those situations that when the HR does find out the truth, they try to cover it up to protect the business, to protect the business.
well, well,
That's just my experience.
I
My
wouldn't
experience.
say they necessarily cover it up. I don't think they're covering it up. In instances where I've had to do investigations, I've done investigations and they haven't gone the way that I presented it, I'll
Mhm.
say. I don't think it's necessarily HR. I think it's the other executives that are in the room making that decision. Most of the time, HR has the correct information. We've
Okay.
conducted this investigation. Yes, this person was harassed, or yes, this person was discriminated against, or yes, this manager didn't do what they were supposed to do. But the other businesses leaders comes together and says, well, we're just going to scoot that aside, because even though HR is considered now a partnership in this
Mhm.
organization, we still don't carry any weight,
Okay.
because legally we have all of these things that we have to attain to. Ethically, we have all these things we need to adhere to, where the CEO and the CFO and the COO and the CTO,
Mhm.
they don't necessarily understand all of the legal implications and the legal jargon and the legal rules that HR has to follow. So I wouldn't say that HR, that's why I say HR isn't always 100% for the company, because most of the time HR has done its job. And
Okay.
usually when internal affairs happen, they have all these big um lawsuits that happen, and they look at the files. All of the files show, yes, these things did happen, but the other people covered it up.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying sometimes, yes, HR, you will have those HR execs that will try to hide it, but most of the time, that's the purpose of HR. Our job is to follow the law. Now, whether the other parts of the organization adhere to what we did,
Mhm.
that's where it gets a little murky, where it's like, technically we did find out, but someone else covered it up. And because
Mhm.
HR legally, we can't talk about these things unless we're sequestered, we can't really come to your defense and say, well, that is what we found, but CEO so and so talked to CFO so and so and they covered it up. So that's where it gets murky.
I'm gonna agree and also disagree with you, and I'm
Okay.
gonna tell you why.
Okay.
I agree with you that we do have professionals like you and I that do our due diligence, that do everything by the book, and we find the findings, but then the people that make the final decisions, I do agree with you on that, are the ones that may cover it up. But I have to disagree with you on this end, is that nowadays, and I can say this based on my 30 plus years in my professional career, multiple certifications, multiple degrees, and so forth. I can say this. Nowadays, when you have people working in HR, they necessarily don't have that training. They necessarily don't know what they are doing. And
Mm-hmm.
they are the ones that make the mistake by sweeping it under the rug due to lack of training, due to lack of knowledge, due to lack of experience. Would you, what would you say about that?
Yep. But that's within the industry. I mean, yes, we're talking about HR. I would agree with that. But again, it's a murky thing. Uh, it's always some bad people that mess it up for everybody. That's really what it boils down to. And it's really unfortunate because HR is a really good industry to be in. There's a lot of
Yes,
different
yes, it
ways you can
is.
have a really great career, but it's
Yes, it
that
is.
it's the legal and compliance
Mhm.
and the employee relations side that messes up all the other facets because, you know, comp and benefits and training and hiring, those are the fun parts. It's the compliance and the employee relations part, excuse me, that kind of gives it a bad name. So yeah, I've been there. I've been on both sides, and it can be difficult, which is why I mainly stayed in the recruiting side. But as I ventured into other sides, that's where you see where it can get a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
The red tape and the rules and
Yes.
ethics and all of that. Yeah.
See, one of the things in my undergraduate, I excelled at labor relations.
Oh yeah.
And at one point, I thought I was going to work for the United States government in the labor relations department, do all of the legal. Yeah, at one point. But, um, and I can say this for myself because it's my personal experience. God had other plans for me. So with that being said, I excelled in that. So even though I'm not directly in that field, I am an indirect expert in that field.
And that's
So
important for people to, and even like I said, writing things down and understanding, you kind of do have to educate yourself on things having to do with the industry that you're in. So that's smart. I think everybody should at least know some of those laws that have to do indirectly with your company. So yes, if you are disabled, you should know the disability laws in your state. If you're an older person, you need to understand age discrimination and how to properly write your resume in a way to where they won't try to discriminate against you. So yes, that is good that you made that point, that it is important to, even though you're not in HR anymore, you still understand some of those features. So that is very important. That's a good thing to have.
thank you. Moreover, would you say, here's leading into my next question.
Um,
Um, when the attorneys for that business get involved, would you say that they murk the waters? Because you just told us that HR is responsible for doing the investigation, but then when they get one of their attorneys involved to do the investigation, at that point, I've experienced from both hands where being a part of the investigative process where the attorney will use words like nepotism because it's less evasive than saying that the person was flat out discriminated against. And then I've been in situations, a part of the investigations, where the attorney would definitely rule out any form of discrimination based off of what the employer said and not what the employee said.
well, yeah, that's what legal is for the company, like straight up.
So
That
there's
that
no gray line there because that's my question. When legal
I
gets
don't I don't
involved,
I don't think so. I haven't worked fully on, so I haven't worked legals. I've worked in compliance, but not on the legal side. But just thinking about that is the purpose of your legal department, is to make sure you're following the law, you're not implicating yourself, but also to protect the organization. It's the same thing with a defense attorney. Whether you're guilty or not, my job is to say and to protect you that you are innocent. And yes, legal department would be the ones who murks up the waters more than I would say the HR.
So
A
you
hundred.
have a better shot if HR, you have a better shot, the 60-40 that you said, if HR is conducting the investigation to find out the truth, than you would have if the legal department got involved. Is that correct?
I would say that, yeah.
And that's very unfortunate.
It isn't, but and then it's also why I say it's unfortunate, but you have to write and document
Document. We've
down what is
consistently
being
heard you.
said.
Yep. Document everything.
Document. Even if it's an offhanded conversation, send a follow up. If you have each other's phone numbers, even if you need to send a follow up text message, legally, text messages can count are for
They
you as
are. They do count.
so even if you need to send your manager, hey, you told me I needed to come in this day, but then you changed, like just have those little simple conversations, even conversations you have on Slack or Teams or any of those off. Anytime there's written communication and you're going back and forth with someone, you need to keep that. Now, there are instances where they'll still try to twist it.
Of course.
It's just the world that we live in. But then that's when you can get EEOC involved.
Mm-hmm.
And the EEOC, and I
The
just
Equal
blanked.
Employment Opportunity Commission.
Thank you, because I just blanked on what that was. They are a great, unbiased company that can really help you if you do feel like you've been discriminated against in any of the ways: age, sex, race, gender, religion. They are really beneficial. They are an organization, they understand the law, and sometimes you may think, yes, I know for a fact I was discriminated against, and they may come back and say no. You still have the option to sue if you want,
Mm-hmm.
but having the EEOC on your side is really beneficial for you to get, acknowledged and compensated that you have been wronged. But
Now,
again, it's just a matter of documentation.
I will also say this, you have the United States Department of Labor too,
That
depending
is true.
on whatever's
Yes.
not covered by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Sometimes they cross over and sometimes one specifically is for the other. So when you're
Yes.
dealing with the United States Department of Labor, they're talking about a group of employees within that have experienced the same thing that you have. So even though you can file an EEOC complaint on your behalf, you can also file a United States Department
Mhm.
discrimination complaint on behalf of everybody who's encountered the same situation as you on that job. And so you have other outlets, you have other areas, but the most important thing that you've given us, that you've said consistently through our conversation, is document everything. You never want it to be your word against their word. They still may twist it, but
Yep.
in a court of law, you can't change those words
Yep.
on that document in
Yep.
a court of law. They're not left open to interpretation in a court of law. And so you have that documentation is on your side.
Mhm. Even if they don't respond,
So,
send that
oh
email.
my gosh, we could, this is so great. Jennifer,
Yeah.
final question. How does sharing your story today help others? Share work that you are continuously doing to improve your field, your profession, and bringing about that much needed change that you just talked about.
Okay, so it's important to share because it's me being able to arm other people with information and to help other people know, like, going in the future. Even if something in the past happened and you're like, oh, dang, I should have did da 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 da. Now you know going forward, these are things that you can do. So that's kind of my contribution to the world, is for me to say, hey, document. Even in relationships outside of work, document. Because we might be arguing about things. Well, no, we said it right here. Sidebar, there was that commercial, was it the insurance company where a couple would be arguing, you said you were going to do this, no you did, and then they're like, show the replay, and then they bring up the person with the replay to talk about. That's kind of what it is. Like, you need to be able to document everything that's happening. It, Even the smallest things. I had a conversation with the manager about changing my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they wrote it down, I still sent an email like, hey, just Wanted to be sure that we were on the same page about me changing my schedule. Instead of me working 8 to 5, I was doing 9 to 6. Like even something that simple, because
Mhm.
on the back end, oh, well, you never told me, we never.
That
So
he say, she say.
exactly. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page, document.
Mhm. And
Some
it's
other
to
thing,
protect yourself. It's
it
to
is to
protect
protect yourself.
yourself.
Yes. Um, Also, I'd say I like to talk to people about their career choices, assisting with resumes, cover letters, um,
Interviewing skills.
interviewing skills, and my little tidbit, yes, cover letters are annoying. I hate cover letters. I hate them. However, I have like 10 different cover letters because you need a cover letter. Sometimes
You
depending
got
on what the depending on the ATS and applicant tracking system. So when you apply for a job online, sometimes they're like, "Well, do you want to put a cover letter?" Put the cover letter.
right.
Even if it's just a paragraph, please have a cover letter. Um Again, I so even within HR again because I've worked in many different factors, subsects of HR.
We're
I
gonna have to
have
wrap this up.
I have 5 different, cover letters, so you can interchange them out. Same thing with your resumes. You need to have different versions of your resumes. So that's something that I preach to all of my friends. I've had friends, contact me, "Hey, can you look this over because I want to apply for this job?" That's my contribution. And
All
just
right.
letting Black people know we got us. There are people there that's still here, that still believes in you and still knows that we can do what we need to do and just continue to work hard and put yourself in those places to help each other.
All right. So, with that being said, thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer. We appreciate you sharing your experience, your professionalism, and your expertise. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next week, we'll continue to discuss and share about real life experiences, both personal and professional. Stories that need to be shared, seen, and heard that makes us human. The truth will not be silenced. To be seen, to be heard, to be human. The surprise. If you like or leave a positive comment about our show, you will get a shout out. This includes businesses, products, services, organizations, and events. Following the link in our show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you and help support our show. Buzzsprout is the best way to launch a professional podcast. Want to ask a question, be a guest, or subscribe to our podcast, The Truth Will Not Be Silenced? Click on the show link. Thank you so much for joining us.